Discover the amazing transformation. A simple woman accidentally wakes up in the wrong billionaire's bedroom. Laura had never felt so out of place in her life. As she stirred awake on the soft, luxurious sheets, the golden light of the morning sun seemed to mock her modest background. The echo of laughter floated through the elegant rooms of the mansion, a stark contrast to her cramped apartment filled with the scent of burnt coffee and takeout containers. It was surreal. Just last night, she served drinks at a lavish charity gala, rubbing elbows with influential people, all in an effort to support her community. Now, she was in the heart of a billionaire-esque world, tangled in fine silks and plush pillows. Memories of the gala flooded back, chandeliers sparkling, tales of philanthropy, and her own quiet hope. She felt a twinge in her chest. She could almost hear her mother's voice, urging her to dream big, but reminding her of where she came from. The grit and determination her mother instilled in her suddenly felt suffocating among the plush, ostentatious surroundings. Who was she kidding? A waitress from a tight-knit Chicago family didn't belong in a millionaire's bed. Just then, a soft knock reverberated against the grand door. In walked Jake, the very billionaire who owned this opulence. 6'3", dressed in a casual blazer, his dark hair tousled. He was every bit the captivating enigma Laura had been warned about. His piercing blue eyes widened as he took in the sight of her. "You're awake," he said, his voice smooth yet tinged with surprise. Yeah," she stammered, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance. "What happened last night?" His brow furrowed, and for a moment, he seemed amused, as if her confusion was refreshing. "You stumbled into the wrong room after the gala." His lips curled into a half-smirk, intriguing her further despite the stark difference in their worlds. The way he looked at her ignited a spark that jolted her drive for self-betterment. Laura had always been honest with herself. She was the reliable anchor for her family. But now, with Jake, there was a breezy allure to the changes life could offer. For the first time, she felt seen, not just judged. And yet, the reality loomed heavy. Wealth didn't just come with luxury. It was cloaked in expectations. As their conversations deepened, a bond flickered between shared laughter and vulnerable confessions. But Jake's privileged history rooted him in societal norms, his family's ambitions hazarding any connection he could forge with Laura. They were portraits of two worlds destined to collide. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But as fate would have it, a minor misunderstanding erupted into chaos, stirring tensions within their families. Laura was once again thrown back into her chaotic life, one filled with late shifts and cold takeout. The walls of her reality constricted around her, reminding her of her silent struggles. Yet, amidst the pain, her community rallied, their voices echoing with resilience, ready to challenge the status quo. As whispers of their relationship swirled, each moment heightened the stakes. Could love defy the stringent walls of privilege? The answer hung thick in the air, ready to rupture. Laura stood firm in her beliefs, her heart pounding with the hope of a new life at the precipice. Would she choose family loyalty, or dare to chase something extraordinary with Jake? The balance of their fates dangled precariously, waiting for the bravery to tip the scales. The sound of laughter echoed in the hall once more, the sharp contrast illuminating just how different her life had become overnight. Laura's heart raced, caught between excitement and dread. She couldn't shake thoughts of her family's struggles from her mind, the way her mom worked double shifts to keep food on the table, the sacrifices that piled up like dusty old boxes in the garage. "This is all so surreal," she murmured, mostly to herself. Jake looked over at her, the warmth in his gaze lingering. "I get it. It's a lot." He stepped closer, his presence a soothing balm against her anxiety. "But, Laura, you don't have to feel any pressure here. Just be yourself." Easier said than done, she thought. But was it possible? Could she really set aside the weight of expectations and just be? The moment hung between them, fragile. She studied his face, the way he looked at her not as a mere curiosity from a charity event, but with something deeper, something genuine. Have you always lived in a mansion like this? She asked, trying to diffuse the palpable tension. Or was there once a time you, too, were in a different world? A flicker of something passed over his expression. Sadness, maybe? Believe it or not, I was a regular kid. My parents worked hard. They made enough to give us a good life, but it wasn't always easy. His honesty struck a chord, dissolving the barriers of their social standings, if only for a moment. So you understand, she said softly. More than you think. I was always the odd one out at fancy parties. It felt forced and meaningless, he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. Then why do you do it? He hesitated, the warmth dissipating as he thought about the question. My family expects it of me. They've built this world, and both my siblings. They seem to want it. The weight of his words settled over her like a blanket pulled too tight. She knew that feeling well of being trapped by family duty. Before they could dive any deeper into this uncharted territory, the phone in Jake's pocket buzzed, pulling him away from their moment. He took it out and frowned, tension creeping back into his posture. I need to take this. He stepped into the hallway, leaving Laura alone in the expansive room, surrounded by silence that felt overwhelming. She wandered to the window, the vast estate sprawling before her like a scene from a movie. But as magnificent as it appeared, she felt harsh realities pulling her back. Was this a life she could really choose? In that moment, she spotted movement at the edge of the estate, a group of people assembling, their silhouettes growing sharper against the sunlight. Curious, she stepped closer, squinting to catch a glimpse. To her shock, they were holding picket signs. Her heart dropped as she read one of them. Capitalism isn't caring. Instinct kicked in. Laura felt the pull of her family, of her community. This wasn't just a billionaire's paradise. This was a call to arms, a chance to stand up for what she believed in. Jake returned. Glancing over her shoulder, she turned back to him, urgency swirling in her chest. There's a protest happening outside. Isn't there? His expression shifted, a shadow of worry crossing his face. It's not safe, Laura. Safe, she said, her voice rising. But what about the people who fight for the rights of others? He hesitated, that familiar conflict swirling in his eyes. Didn't we just talk about being ourselves? And there it was, a challenge in her voice, a moment that could define her path. As she stared into Jake's troubled gaze, she felt a decision looming large in the air. Would she continue down this uncertain road with him, or would she reclaim her voice and fight not just for herself, but for everyone like her? As she contemplated the choice before her, the reality of their worlds crashed once more, sending her heart racing. Was this the moment that led to a new life, or a fracture between two worlds forever marked by privilege and struggle? Laura's mind raced. The outside world buzzed with voices, a visceral reminder of everything she had fought for back home. The protest was more than just a gathering. It was a rallying cry, an expression of anger and hope rolled into one. Jake? She started, her heart pounding. This might be our chance to make a difference. He let out a breath, frustration creasing his brow. But what do you think that will accomplish? You're just one person in a sea of thousands. Maybe I'm just one person, she shot back, her voice stronger now, fueled by the urgency she felt outside. But if I stand back and do nothing, what does that mean for everyone else? How can I look at my family and say I didn't fight for them? Jake looked torn, caught in a whirlwind of his own thoughts. You don't really know what you're stepping into. It's not a game out there. And sitting here is? She fired back. Look around. This mansion is built on the same troubles they're trying to protest. He flinched at her words like they were a slap. You think I don't care? No, she replied quickly. I think you care about your family's expectations. But what about what you want? He ran a hand through his hair, frustration radiating off him. It's not that simple, Laura. I'm not just my own man out there. I've got a reputation to uphold. A reputation that's built on inequality? She challenged, her voice trembling slightly but firm. Think about it. You're here, living this life, while people out there are fighting every single day for things that shouldn't be a luxury. The tension in the air thickened, heavy with unspoken words. For a fleeting moment, she thought he might step away, retreat into his world of privilege. But instead, the flicker in his eyes told her he was listening, truly listening. The world is complicated, he finally said, his voice softer now, but still full of concern. I live in a different world, Laura. I don't want you to get hurt. I'm not afraid of discomfort, she said, surprising herself with the strength of her conviction. I'm afraid of inaction. He paused, weighing her words against the backdrop of their stark realities. If you go out there, what will you do? I'll stand with them. No more hiding in this mansion. No more pretending I don't care. A fierce determination ignited her. She wanted to feel empowered, to embrace every part of who she was, regardless of the gilded facade surrounding her. Jake's gaze shifted outside, where the crowd continued to swell. You know they might not see you as just Laura. A knowing smile tugged at her lips. And they might not see you as just Jake either. But that's the point, right? Human beings stand behind those signs. It's not about our names. He searched her eyes. Uncertainty reflected back at him. Then, slowly, he nodded, as if conceding to a truth he couldn't deny. Okay, but if you're going, I'm coming with you. The emotions swirling between them shifted. A subtle understanding sparked in her chest, two paths intertwining. Diverging from their familiar lives, they headed towards the door. Laura's heart raced faster than ever. It wasn't just a protest, it was her pivotal moment. Stepping into that crowd meant stepping away from the safety of ignorance, embracing the discomfort of truth. Together, she said quietly, glancing at Jake, their motivations blurring together in a shared purpose. But as they opened the door, they were met by a wall of noise, passion, and a sea of unfamiliar faces energizing and unnerving her simultaneously. Was she ready for this? Would she find her voice among the chaos, or would she be just another face in the crowd? With her heart pounding louder than ever, she stepped outside, feeling as though she was crossing an invisible threshold. The world she thought she knew was changing by the second, and her place in it was about to be redefined. What would the crowd think of her? Would she find her voice, or lose herself in the swell of passion? Only time would tell as she took that monumental step forward, ready to embrace the unknown. The air felt electric as Laura stepped into the thrumming heart of the protest, and the adrenaline surged through her veins. Every shout and chant resonated, but it was the faces that caught her attention, the determination etched into the skin of thousands yearning for change. It struck her how connected they all were, different stories, but united in purpose. She could feel her pulse matching the rhythm of their cries, and with each step, doubt slipped away. Stay close, Jake whispered, his fingers brushing against her arm. She could sense his anxiety, but it only fueled her resolve. Together, they joined the throng moving toward the front of the line, a flowing river of humanity, each person a drop contributing to something greater. Suddenly, a roar erupted from the crowd. What do we want? A voice bellowed, amplified by sheer passion. Justice, echoed back the response, a wave of sound rolling through them. Laura took a breath, her heart racing. She wanted to join in, to amplify her voice amid the cacophony. Yet the weight of fear pressed against her chest. How could she, Laura the girl raised in a mansion, with a life so different, speak for them? Then she spotted a sign raised high above the rest. No more silence. It was simple, bold, and demanded attention. In that moment, she realized that silence was the enemy. It wasn't just about being out here. It was about declaring who she stood with, who she was willing to fight for. She turned to Jake, the expression on his face a mixture of concern and curiosity. I have to do this. I can't just stand quietly by. I know, he replied, a hard edge to his voice. Just remember, it's not the same for us. Be careful. But it was too late. She felt a fire kindling inside her, compelling her to take action. With a deep breath, she began to speak, hesitantly at first, her voice barely rising above the surrounding noise. They're right, she started, gathering strength. We can't stay silent anymore. People are hurting, and it's time to acknowledge that. Some heads turned. She felt eyes on her. With every word, her confidence blossomed. You know, I grew up in a bubble. I lived in a world where problems felt far away. But now, standing here, I see how real it is. I'm ready to step out of that world and join you. Because this matters. The crowd began to respond, some clapping, others shouting encouragement, and it fueled her more. It was like she had ignited something, a small spark, becoming a roaring flame. Sensing it, Jake's jaw dropped slightly, surprise crossing his features. Who are you, really? He he murmured, still processing the transformation unfolding before him. Laura couldn't contain the smile breaking at her lips. Just someone who has finally decided to show up. The atmosphere around them shifted. Laura felt it in her bones. She was no longer just observing. She was living, breathing, and fighting alongside these passionate individuals. It was terrifying yet exhilarating. A thrilling whirlpool of emotions collided, both for her and the people around them. But then, amidst the uplifting chants, the crowd began to part, revealing a larger group marching with a very different agenda opposition. Dressed in formal attire, with signs condemning the protest, they approached with an aura of confrontation. The air thickened as both sides prepared for a collision, a silent standoff brewing like a storm. Laura's heart pounded in her chest. Was she ready for what was coming next? And in that moment of uncertainty, a single thought pierced through her fear. This was the moment where everything could change. What would happen when those two worlds collided? Would she stand her ground or be swept away in the chaos? Laura stood there, her heart racing, the crowd swirling around her like a tempest. The voices clashed, hopeful cries for justice on one side, and the resolute demands for order from the opposing group. With every heartbeat, the tension built. She could see the determination flicker in the eyes of those beside her. They were waiting for something to ignite. Just breathe, Jake said, squeezing her hand as if he could ground her in that precarious moment. But her breath caught in her throat as the opposition took a few more steady steps forward, their expressions steely and unyielding. They carried signs that branded everything the protest stood for as a disruption to the natural order. What is going to happen? She whispered to Jake, fear creeping in again, threatening to snuff out the flame she had just ignited. We can't back down, he replied, though his voice was shaky. Just remember what you said, Laura. Something sparked deep within her. You're right. I can't disappear now. I've already stepped out of my bubble. And with that thought echoing in her mind, she took a step forward, disentangling her fingers from Jake's grip. They needed to see her. All of them needed to know they weren't alone. She could feel the weight of their eyes on her as she held her head high. Together, she shouted, her voice cutting through the murmur of uncertainty. We stand together. For every voice that has been silenced. The crowd erupted again, anger and resolve merging into power. The opposing group paused, momentarily caught off guard by her boldness. The air vibrated as the protesters echoed her call, a fierce wave crashing against the stark solidity of the opposition. Together, they roared back, their chants mingling with the pounding of drums and the rattling of makeshift instruments. That a ripple made its way through both groups as tension gave way to palpable energy. Laura could feel it pushing her forward. She took another step. The ground felt solid beneath her feet despite the chaos surrounding her. Then she spotted a familiar face beyond the throng, her childhood friend, Mark. His expression conflicted. He had always held a different viewpoint, molded by the very same elite bubble she had escaped. Mark, she called out, her voice laced with desperation. You're wrong. The world is bigger than what we've been taught. His brow furrowed, confusion dancing in his blue eyes. Laura, you don't know what you're getting into. But I do. She shouted back, her heart pounding. This isn't about us anymore. It's about everyone who has suffered in silence. It's about fairness. For a brief moment, hesitation flickered across his face, and Laura saw a glimpse of the boy she had grown up with, a friend buried under years of privilege and disconnection. She could see the struggle within him, and while she wasn't sure it would change anything, she hoped to plant a seed. Suddenly, a loud shout cut through the air, snapping her focus back to the crowd. An organizer on a nearby platform lifted a megaphone, calling for unity. It was now or never. As both groups squared off, the air thickened with anticipation. Laura felt energy crackling around her, an invisible charge that promised change. Before she could think, her feet moved. She stepped forward, raising her arms as if to embrace both sides. Let us talk. No more anger, just conversation. We all deserve to be heard. Now all eyes were on her, a radical shift in the energies clashing before her. The fight hovered on the edge of chaos. Yet here she stood, single-minded in hope. Would her plea for understanding spark a moment of clarity among the crowd? Or would it ignite even deeper conflict? As silence enveloped the protests, the answer lingered in the air, pregnant with possibility. Could this be the moment that changed everything? or would it all collapse around her? The moment stretched like thin thread, a fragile balance between chaos and hope. Laura stood, arms raised, feeling the weight of every gaze settling upon her. The crowd pulsed with expectation, like a single entity drawing in its breath, as she became the pivot for change they all craved. Then, from the back of the opposition, a voice pierced through the anticipation. What happens if we listen and find out we're right? A man stepped forward, his face set in rigid lines of defiance. His tone dripped with disdain, sharpening the tension in the air. Laura felt her heart plunge. This wasn't what she had hoped for. Because being right is less important than understanding. She shouted back, her voice ringing out with a strange mix of defiance and desperation. The crowd rippled, some questioning her courage while others were emboldened by her passion. Jake squeezed her shoulder, a silent reminder of their shared fight. "You've got this," he whispered, though she could hear the flickers of doubt in his voice. The opposing group shifted slightly, whispering among themselves. Laura noticed Mark caught in the tumult, caught between old beliefs and the stirring of a new truth. Swallowing her fear, she met his eyes. "Mark, if you listen, really listen, you might find we all want the same thing." His face betrayed the inner turmoil, torn between friendship and conditioning. The yearning for unity flickered in his eyes, and for a moment, she thought he might step forward to join her, to bridge the chasm that had long separated them. But tragedy, it seemed, had other plans. Suddenly, a bottle flew through the air, shattering dangerously close to Laura's feet. The crowd gasped collectively as adrenaline surged. The opposing group surged forward, emboldened by the throw, wrath igniting in their eyes. "See," that same voice echoed. "They're violent. We must protect ourselves." The wave of anger bubbled up around Laura, her heart racing as she glimpsed chaos unraveling before her. People surged and pushed, fear crackling like electricity in the air. "Stop," she shouted, but it was lost in the rising tide of adrenaline-fueled hostility. "Get back," shouted a young woman, her eyes wide and fearful, shoving others aside in an attempt to assert control. Laura's chest tightened. "No. Everyone, please listen." She had to do something, anything, to sever the violent thread drawing them all toward disaster. With each shouted insult and raised fist, she could feel hope slipping away, drowning beneath confusion and fear. "Jake," Laura called, spotting him on the periphery, hand rising as he moved to protect her. "We can't let this happen. Stay where you are," he yelled, eyes darting between her and the crowd. But Laura wouldn't wait. She took a deep breath and pushed past those who stumbled backward to face the growing fury. "If we keep fighting, we'll lose everything. Instead, let us find common ground." The words lanced through the tension, momentarily quieting the crowd. She could see the glare soften, hear the murmurs of confusion blend with uncertainty. Mark hesitated, visibly wrestling with the implications of her plea. All eyes fell on him, their fate intertwined at this pivotal moment. Would he stand with the fear and anger, or would he move toward understanding? And just like that, the world around Laura seemed to inhale, the crowd stifled by the weight of waiting for his answer, her heart thudding loudly in her chest as she held her breath. Would he break the cycle, or would escalation consume them all? In that critical silence, everything hung in the balance, holding a whisper of potential that could change their lives forever. As Mark opened his mouth, a single question loomed larger than any anger. How do we move forward from here? Laura's heart raced, a flicker of hope igniting once more. But she knew this was only the beginning. Laura felt a swell of hope as she stared into Mark's searching eyes. His question echoed like a drumbeat in the tense air, pushing her thoughts into overdrive. This was the moment she had yearned for, the key to unlocking a conversation long overdue. "Together. We move forward together," she said, her voice steadying as she took a step toward him. The crowd shifted, murmurs sparking like kindling. "If we keep pushing each other away, nothing will change. We must join forces to find solutions that work for everyone." Jake's presence behind her was a constant support, his energy strengthening her resolve. She could feel the crowd holding its breath, each person caught in the unpredictable current flowing between hope and fear. Mark's brow furrowed. "You really think we can agree on anything?" The skepticism dripped from his words. but his posture softened a flicker of curiosity in the struggle. I know we can, Laura urged, her heart racing. We all want safety, a future, and a place where we can be heard. But we can't do it fighting each other. We find common ground and build from there. Silence enveloped them once more, a fragile peace that felt almost unreal. The young woman who had shouted earlier stood stock still, her fierce expression wavering. From across the crowd, Laura caught glimpses of faces shifting, minds wrestling with doubt and fear colliding with the spark of possibility. Mark glanced at some of the others in the opposition. A few stood frozen, their expressions revealing uncertainty. What if they don't want to listen? He asked. They will if we start listening first, Laura replied, her determination punctuating each word. This isn't just about our differences, it's about what we can create together. We can build a better world if we choose to trust each other. A ripple of agreement began to emerge from the crowd. Some nodded hesitantly, while others shared glances that suggested a willingness to explore this new vein of thought. Together? Mark echoed, a hint of vulnerability creeping into his voice. Yes, together, Laura shouted, her spirit surging. Let us be better than our past. Let us show that empathy can lead us towards something greater than anger. In that moment, a connection flickered between them. A bridge, however small, was forming in the air, thick with tension. She could see Mark weighing the possibilities, his heart already beginning to peel away the layers of doubt. But just as hope began to bloom, a loud crash broke through, metal clanging harshly against asphalt, a sound louder than any words exchanged. Laura spun around, her stomach dropped. A man from the opposing side hurled a trash can into the mix, and chaos erupted anew. Get them! Someone screamed, spurring the uproar as frightened shouts ricocheted across the square. Jake pulled Laura closer, his voice urgent. We have to go? They want to calm down after this. No, I need to help, Laura protested, eyes locking with Mark. We can't let this turn violent. We have to reach them. But the crowd was spiraling. The fear and anger that had dimmed for a fleeting moment was back, hungry, vicious. Mark, she cried, desperation cutting through the noise. If he pulled together with her now, if he stood up against the tide, but would he? Laura, Jake shouted, glancing back at the shoving mass as the chaos grew. We need to move. As she stood there, caught in the pull of a flocking storm and the glimmer of unity, she faced a stark choice. Return to safety or risk everything to prove that together they could conquer fear. And as Mark turned back toward the fray, refusing to yield, the question lingered in the air. Could courage truly spark a transformation strong enough to defuse the anger erupting around them, or would it only fuel the fire? The chaos erupted like a thunderstorm. Laura's heart raced as she darted her gaze over the crowd, searching for signs of what to do next. The metal trash can lay on its side, a jagged reminder of how quickly hope could turn to despair. Laura, Jake gripped her shoulder, his anxiety evident. This isn't worth it. We can't fix this right now. Let us go. But she shook her head. Around them, arms flailed in panic, and shouts mixed with cries of fear. A knot tightened in her stomach. If we leave now, what message are we sending? We can't just abandon them. Mark needs to hear this. They need to hear people aren't thinking straight. Jake's voice rose, a mixture of fear and frustration. We can't change minds when they're in this state. Laura's resolve held firm. She stepped forward, calling out, her voice echoing above the noise. Everyone, please, let us take a breath. Some turned their heads, momentarily distracted. The murmur of confusion lowered, if only for an instant. Her eyes locked with Mark's again, searching for a glimmer of unity within the storm brewing in his heart. We can still find a way to talk. But the moment was fleeting. In the blink of an eye, another push surged through the crowd like a wave crashing against the shore, throwing chaos back into the mix. Angry shouts erupted as bodies collided. Fear rippled along the edges of hope, the line between anger and reason wearing thin. Laura, let us move, Jake urged again, but she couldn't take a step back now. She wanted to reach those who were lost in their emotions, those who only saw darkness ahead. Risking everything felt like the only option left. Mark, we can still turn this around, she yelled, her voice thick with desperation. The connection they had formed moments earlier flickered like a stuttering flame as Mark looked back at her. His eyes carried a storm of conflicting emotions. Determination battled fear. What if they don't want to listen? What if it gets worse? Laura took a step closer, urgency propelling her forward. Then we show them. She shouted. We become the voice of calm. We can be the spark that reignites understanding. His expression softened, just for a moment. Together? Yes, together. She could feel the strength of her words reaching toward him, the passion in her voice cutting through the din. Let us show them what it means to stand united. The crowd began to slow, as if they could feel the electrifying charge in the air between them. Some were still caught in the whirlwind of anger, but others hesitated, glancing around, faces asking silent questions. Could unity really pierce through the anger? Then, just as a flicker of hope seemed possible, someone shoved against Laura, and she lost her balance, stumbling backward. Jake quickly lunged to catch her. Laura, he exclaimed, concern radiating from every inch of him. She steadied herself, but felt the uncertainty rising again. The atmosphere pulsed with confusion, anger threatening to hijack the moment. Yet, through the turmoil, Laura saw the cracks forming in the wall of fear, saw the flickering lights of understanding sparking in some of the faces around her. Together, she shouted again, her voice piercing through. We can choose empathy over anger. If we can. Just before she could finish, a sharp yell cut through the air. A figure charged forward, shouting something incomprehensible, the anger in his voice piercing like a blade. Get down, Jake shouted, pulling Laura behind him as the energy shifted once more, potent and dangerous. Fearfully, she glanced around, her heart pounding. They were on the brink of a full-blown clash. Could they really turn this around? As she steadied her breath, determined not to give in to the panic, the air was thick with tension, a powder keg waiting for ignition. How could she convince them before it imploded? Then, the pivotal question struck her, the question that could either tip the scales toward chaos or uncover a sliver of change. Will you stand with us? She yelled into the maelstrom, praying her words would resonate amidst the noise. And as she looked from Mark to Jake, their fates hanging in the balance, she realized she was no longer just fighting for others. She was fighting for herself, for the courage to choose hope over despair. In that charged moment, surrounded by the cacophony of rage, she wondered, would they choose to stand, or would they crumble into the chaos? The air crackled with uncertainty as Laura's question hung in the chaos. For a split second, the crowd fell silent, their anger momentarily dimmed by her plea. Hope flickered like a candle caught in the wind. Then, a voice called out from the fringe of the crowd. What do you mean? Stand with you? It echoed the confusion that stirred among the people. A man stepped forward, his brows knit with skepticism. Laura took a deep breath, her heart thumping loudly in her ears. Stand with us means choosing understanding over rage, choosing to listen instead of shout. We can redirect this anger into something powerful. Jake nodded, his faith in her growing as he stepped closer. We all feel the fear, the frustration, he shouted, raising his voice to carry it through the noise. But we're not enemies. We want the same things. Still, we have a choice. What will we do with this moment? The crowd stirred restlessly. A few faces reflected uncertainty, while others were still tightly contorted with rage. But amidst the turmoil, Laura caught sight of a couple holding hands, their fingers entwined, their eyes searching for clarity. It was a glimmer of hope in a sea of doubt. Let love be greater than the fear, she called out, her voice unwavering as she pressed on. Let us show each other what it means to stand together, to lift each other up. We can transform this moment into a catalyst for change. She felt a rush of adrenaline. She couldn't let this slip away. Yet there was a small, stirring fear in her that whispered, what if they don't want to listen? Mark took a step forward, his expression shifting. He was torn, but something in her words had sparked recognition. What if this leads to something worse? He asked, still cautious but open-hearted. Jake turned to Mark, eyes brightening with belief. No one wants to fight. This isn't just about you or me. It's about all of us. Let us find common ground. As voices began to murmur, some nodded slowly. Someone else shouted, we're tired of fighting. We need to be heard. With every response that flowed through the crowd, Laura felt her heart swell. The air buzzed with an intensity she hadn't felt before. Exactly, she shouted, raising her hand in solidarity. We can hear you. We can see your pain. But we can't solve it with violence. Let us talk. Let us find a solution together. Mark moved closer, uncertainty giving way to resolve. Maybe we can find a way to talk this out, he said, his voice rising above the crowd. As murmurs of agreement spread like wildfire, the feeling shifted. Laura grabbed Jake's hand, her grip firm. They glanced around at the faces, alive with the possibility of change. It was as if the storm clouds began to part, letting even the faintest light through. Together, she urged once more, raising her voice. Let this moment be the beginning. Let this be the change we've all yearned for. Will you stand with us? The rumble of agreement grew, emboldening others to react. One by one, more voices joined in, hesitantly at first, but gathering strength. Suddenly, the man who had challenged her stepped forward again. If we can't fight each other, what is next? How do we make our voices heard? His question lingered in the air like a challenge. Laura's heartbeat quickened. She understood exactly what was at stake, and she could sense the turning point ahead. Next she began, her mind racing. We take our message to those who don't have the same fear. We bring our voices together, and we won't stop until we're heard. Just then, the tension shifted again. A group of people near the back began to shout out in defiance, their previous anger bubbling back up. This is pointless. You all are wasting your time. The crowd faltered. The flicker of hope threatened once more. But as Laura looked over Jake's shoulder at Mark, she realized she needed to step up even further. This is our moment, she shouted over the cresting noise. This is where we prove that though the path is hard, change begins with us. Are we really going to let it end here? The question resonated, but as she met the steely eyes of that defiant group, she understood this was only the beginning. As the crowd swirled with voices both for and against her, Laura felt a wave of determination wash over her. They were at a crossroads, and every word from here could tip the scales to either peace or chaos. Would they find the courage to stand together, or would they allow the division to tear them apart once more? With the stakes higher than ever, she prepared herself for what lay ahead. How would she make sure they didn't lose what was starting to be built? Laura stood at the precipice of change, uncertainty swirling around her like a tempest. She could feel the fragile threads of hope weaving through the crowd, but they were tangled in anger and fear, making it hard to see the way forward. As she surveyed the sea of faces, a resolve began to swell within her. This is just the beginning. We can bridge the divide. Drawing in a deep breath, she stepped closer to Mark, his familiar features both comfort and challenge. We're not just fighting for ourselves. Every person here is a story, a struggle, and a dream waiting for a chance. We can't waste this moment. Behind her, Jake stood, anxiety shifting into fiery determination. He squeezed her hand tighter, eyes focused on the crowd, willing the collective tension to relent. If we can stand united, we can't lose, he echoed, his voice cutting through the noisy climate. We must choose to listen first, to respect each other's pain. The man from before, the one who had thrown doubt into the air like confetti, frowned but took a step back. But how do we start? What does that even look like? His voice carried weight, one foot in skepticism and another inching toward curiosity. Together, Laura shouted, feeling the energy shift, ebbing the chaos. Together, we begin with compassion. Let us form groups where we can truly hear what's at stake for each person. Everyone's voice matters, not just ours. A spark of agreement flickered across the collective faces, and Laura took heart. Mark nodded, brows furrowing in thought. And what about our ideas? How do we bring them all together without losing our own? Everyone deserves to be heard. She stepped forward. Your experiences shape your beliefs, just like mine shape mine. It's time to share what that looks like, without condemnation. She could see him wrestling within, unease flickering under the surface. Another voice emerged, a young woman with fierce determination in her eyes. I'm tired of shouting into the void. I want to be part of a conversation that leads to real change. How do we make that happen? Yes, Laura felt the energy rise. We take our anger and turn it into dialogue. Turn protests into plans, noise into solutions. Rather than shouting past each other, let us come together to forge paths we can walk together. A community forum? Someone called out, voices rising in excitement. Yes, Laura beamed, the idea fueling the fire in her heart. We create spaces where everyone feels welcome to talk, not just the privileged few in suits. We break down the barriers of misunderstanding. As agreement rippled through the crowd, something began to shift. The air, once thick with animosity, was now sparking with possibility. But we need a system to follow, an elderly gentleman interjected. Something structured to ensure every voice is heard. The system starts with trust. Jake interjected, stepping forward, emboldened by Laura's passion. Let us create a platform for discussion. Everyone should be represented. People like us, who come from different worlds, must be central to every conversation. Sudden waves of approval washed through the crowd, sentiments echoing a new, united dream. We can make it happen. Others shouted, enthusiasm building like a crescendo. Mark's shoulders began to relax, the weight of hesitation lifting slightly. Maybe something good can come of this, he said quietly, the hope barely peeking through. But it was a start. Exactly, Mark. We harness this energy, push back against the fear. Laura felt buoyed by the rising tide of voices striving for unity. A community that listens is stronger than one that fights. The people around them began to chant, the sound swelling to fill the space between them. We want to be heard. We want to be seen. Tears sprung to Laura's eyes, overwhelmed by the emotions in the air. Love, hope, and determination interweaved, creating a tapestry of connection that transcended the chaos. As the shouts burst forth, she felt Jake squeeze her hand, a silent promise of partnership amid the rising energy. Together, they could spur change. Let us gather tonight. We'll meet at the park, she shouted. Let us share our stories. Let us build that forum. With every confirmed nod, every shout of agreement, the future shifted. The crowd began to finally unite, confusion yielding to excitement, as they leaned into their possibility. In that moment, standing amidst the collective surge of hope and connection, Laura realized the essence of transformation. It wasn't solely about her journey or individuality. It was about how vulnerability could spark a revolution, a monument born of mutual understanding, love, and resilience. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting golden rays across the charged crowd, Laura took a deep breath, feeling each heart beat around her in a rhythmic symbol of change. Together, she reminded them, a smile breaking across her face, we hold the power to change the world. Together, they rallied, knowing tomorrow would not simply be a new day, but a new dawn rooted in their shared humanity and a firm commitment to create change. The last echoes of their chants faded into the evening as Laura stepped forward, not just a voice, but a beacon for others, forever transformed in the light of solidarity and love. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now and become part of this journey of inspiring stories. This is the moment to show your support. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm and spread the word. Comment your reactions and feelings about this exhilarating conclusion. What moments resonated with you most? Don't wait not even one more second to share this powerful transformation with at least 5 friends who need to see that change is possible. Let us uplift each other and spark the future together.